Michelle Cottle is a member of the editorial board at New York Times. She has an opinion piece in the paper today, and I got to share it with you uh, because I'm running out of my own words. I have exhausted the supply of phrases and curse words and scatological language and obscenities. I don't have any left, which is one of the reasons we're taking a week off so I can replenish. But on that basis, let me just share with you what Michelle Cottle wrote. In his opening statement yesterday, the last day of the scheduled public hearings in the House impeachment inquiry, Devin Nunes, the top Republican on the House Intelligence Committee, expressed his hope that, quote, today's hearing marks the merciful end of this spectacle in the impeachment committee, end quote. One can understand Mr. Nunes' eagerness to be done with this phase of the investigation, which was prompted by allegations that Trump conditioned certain diplomatic and military support of Ukraine on the willingness of that nation's president to do his, Trump's, political bidding. Specifically, Trump wanted Mr. Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, to announce an investigation. And let me pause from what Michelle just wrote. Announce an investigation. There is no substance to Donald Trump. A good example, oops, my goodness. Hold on just a second while I get rid of that. I don't know who in the world would want to talk to me. Whew, sorry. Trump does not want a real investigation, just like he doesn't want a real wall. He doesn't want infrastructure. Oh, we're going to have the shiniest roads and prettiest. That's all bullshit. And he doesn't necessarily want an investigation of the Bidens. What he wants is an announcement that there's going to be one, just like his announcement that, well, my people are in Hawaii right now checking out Barack Obama's birth certificate. Trump is 100% bullshit. Always has been, always will be. Is now. Back to Michelle. Trump wanted Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, to announce an investigation into a debunked conspiracy theory that Ukraine, not Russia, had hacked Democratic computers during the 2016 campaign, along with a second inquiry into alleged corruption by one of Mr. Trump's 2020 political rivals, former Vice President Joe Biden and his son Hunter. Okay. Despite Mr. Nunes' Fantasyland contentions that the testimony of the past 2 weeks has served only to expose Democrats, what Noonan calls asinine and pitiful attempts to overthrow a president, in reality, the proceedings have produced a number of startling revelations, none of them exonerating the president. The biggest bombshell came Wednesday with the appearance of Gordon Sondland, the Trump mega-donor turned ambassador to the European Union, who dismantled the top talking points of presidential apologists. Key takeaway, there was a quid pro quo. Thursday brought only more grief for Mr. Nunes and other Trump defenders as their closing witnesses, plural, House Democrats called Fiona Hill, formerly the National Security Council's top expert on Russia, and David Holmes, a political officer at the American Embassy in Kyiv, Ukraine. Mr. Holmes is the official who overheard the phone call on July 26 between Trump and Sondland, in which the president quizzed the ambassador about the status of the investigations he was seeking. Mr. Holmes also recalled Mr. Sondland telling him after the call that the president didn't give a shit about Ukraine except for the, quote, big stuff, end quote, that directly affected him, Trump, such as the, quote, Biden investigation, end quote. Mr. Holmes had more general observations about the impact of playing politics with America's Ukraine policy Beginning in March, he recalled, quote, the three priorities of security, economy, and justice, and our support for the Ukrainian democratic resistance to Russian aggression became overshadowed by a political agenda promoted by former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani and a cadre of officials operating with a direct channel to the White House, end quote. Mr. Holmes explained the confused lines of authority that developed, fueling conflicting agendas and threatening to undermine long-standing policy goals. Mr. Holmes said, quote, President Zelensky needed to show U.S. support at the highest level in order to demonstrate to Russian President Putin that he, Zelensky, had U.S. backing, as well as to advance his ambitious anti-corruption reform agenda at home, end quote. Dr. Hill was even more pointed with her message, which boiled down to this: Republican lawmakers need to stop behaving like Russian stooges. That's like asking a zebra to change its stripes. I added that to Michelle's piece. Back to Michelle. Ms. Hill said, quote, based on questions and statements I've heard, some of you on the committee appear to believe that Russia and its security services did not conduct a campaign against our country, and that perhaps, somehow, for some reason, Ukraine did. This is a fictional narrative that has been perpetrated and propagated by the Russian security services themselves, end quote. Let me say that again, please. Quote, this is a fictional narrative that has been perpetrated and propagated by the Russian security services themselves. Doesn't propagated mean originated? Dr. Hill warned that Russia's, quote, goal is to weaken our country, end quote, and that indulging such fantasies played into Vladimir Putin's hands. Now, it should be noted, Dr. Hill co-wrote a 500-page book analyzing the Russian president's psyche. Ms. Hill stressed, quote, these fictions are harmful even if they are deployed for purely domestic political purposes, end quote. Dr. Hill is not one to get intimidated or flustered. This is, after all, a woman who at age 11 once had a classmate set fire to one of her pigtails. She put out her flaming hair with her bare hands and finished the test she was taking. With her crisp British accent, she at times came across as an exasperated adult chiding naughty children. She said, quote, in the course of this investigation, I would ask that you please not promote politically driven falsehoods that so clearly advanced Russian interests. If the president, she went on, or anyone else impedes or subverts the national security of the United States in order to further domestic, political, or personal interests, that is more than worthy of your attention, end quote. Now, let me digress from Michelle Cottle's piece here. Speaking as she did in structured sentences and paragraphs, I don't doubt for a second that maybe 75, 85% of what she was saying went completely over the empty heads of these son of a bitches on the Republican side, a number of whom had left the hearing because they did not want to hear the truth that they were fucking up. So they left. Well, as Richard Bach said in one of the Seagull books, there is no problem so big you can't walk away from it. And this has been a problem for these Republican demons. The truth. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. You have your choice. You can listen to the ranting with the audio podcast or listen and watch me lose control with a video podcast subscription. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.